Good evening from Guanajuato, Mexico. Wayne Shorter passed today. Not unexpected, certainly, but what's interesting was my reaction and everyone else's reaction because of who Wayne Shorter was. And 6 months ago, September 23rd, Pharoah Sanders passed as well. He went on to whatever happens after this life, we don't know. We'll never know. Maybe we come back, who knows? Anything is possible. But we're here now, and tonight I want to play some of their music, a couple of video performances, and offer some thoughts on them. And I'd love to hear what you have to say as well. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of comments here I'm going to jump to immediately before I actually begin. Carol says they have such a gift in the way that Wayne and Pharoah both make one feel every single note. Yeah. And David Perry, John Hicks on piano. Exactly. Beautiful. Yeah, definitely. And also Mr. Perry, as it turns out, joins us from the Philippines tonight. Or in your case, in the morning. It's probably very early in the morning. So welcome, David Perry. Please use the chat area on the right side, or if you're on Facebook, just add your comments. If you're on YouTube, you can add comments as well. Love to know what you think, and if you have any questions that I can answer. I have some knowledge, not a lot though. Lionel Thomas painted him. Did you paint Pharoah or did you paint Wayne? And Mr. Thomas says, such an icon. Both icons, definitely. So I want to talk a little bit about Pharoah to start. That opening video performance of Pharoah doing After the Rain, which is such a beautiful lyrical mood that he sets there. When Pharoah first arrived in the mid-'60s, he was a somewhat controversial figure. John Coltrane's music was just changing in the early 60s and the mid-'60s so rapidly. And some of the changes were not very well received by critics and listeners. In the early 60s, Coltrane paired with Eric Dolphy, and their music, which I find difficult to understand, was largely condemned at the time. They were described as anti-jazz. They had to have an article in Downbeat magazine, John Coltrane and Eric Dolphy answer their critics. I mean, and after Dolphy left the band, sometime after that, Coltrane invited Pharoah Sanders to join the band. And the words that were used to describe Pharoah's music and the music that Coltrane started to play at that time, avant-garde jazz, free jazz. In our culture, we have to put a label on everything. That word jazz is really an umbrella for so many different things. It doesn't mean anything anymore. In a way, it holds everything back. Anyway, Pharoah joins John Coltrane, and Pharoah's playing involves a lot of screaming, a lot of intense playing that fell out of the bounds of the usual play the changes and swing, and that upset a lot of people. And you got to fire Pharoah Sanders, people said to Coltrane. Totally ridiculous, but nevertheless, different times, different place. Anyway, Pharoah and Train recorded together Ascension, Meditations, Live at the Village Vanguard again. If you go back and you listen to that music now, at least from my perspective, it doesn't sound too crazy. Coltrane, of course, continued to evolve, 66 and 67. Hard to describe exactly what that is in my current state of mind, but it takes a desire to listen and willingness to you listen to it with an open mind, basically. Anyway, Pharoah was this guy. Hey, this guy, playing with Coltrane, playing a lot of intense music. He got a contract with Impulse Records. He made a number of recordings. Perhaps one of my favorites is Themby, the track Astral Traveling with Lonnie Liston Smith. So his playing is a mixture of what I call spiritual music, fiery avant-garde playing, and sadly, Coltrane died. They stopped playing together. Pharoah is on his own. In fact, the first time I saw him was 2 years after that at the Village Vanguard one night. I can't remember which Pharoah Sanders record I had heard because there was a bunch of them at Impulse. I'm doing this rather spontaneously. I didn't write the script tonight, so accept my apologies. Anyway, I'm at the Vanguard, and seated at the table next to me is the English actor Trevor Howard. Somehow an unlikely companion here at the Village Vanguard, having recently seen him in, well, not so recently before that, but his role as Captain Bligh in A Mutiny on the Bounty with Marlon Brando, digging Pharoah Sanders. All right. And first time I heard Pharoah Sanders live, really found his playing interesting. I was kind of young at the time, just getting into that outside thing, so to speak. And then as my ears became more attuned, my listening became more enjoyable with that music. Pharoah evolved, and he started playing more blues and more standards. And his first two pianists were actually Lonnie Liston Smith and Joe Bonner. Norman Connors was his drummer. I saw Pharoah, just remembered another gig I saw him at. It was a benefit for WRVR at the Beacon Theater. It must have been 75, 76, something like that. Yeah. Except it was Joe Bonner on piano, Stanley Clark on bass, and Norman Connors on drums, and I think Marvin Hannibal Peterson. That was incredible. And then the next time I saw Pharoah, he had one of the best rhythm sections in New York at that time, and I think one of the best rhythm sections ever, which was John Hicks on piano, Walter Booker on bass, and Idris Muhammad on drums. They did a lot of live appearances together. They recorded together. There was a taste of John Hicks that you just heard there. I just posted a video I invite you to check out called Screaming. Pharoah plays the blues with that band, except Ray Drummond on bass. And the thing about Pharoah was he had, for all that fiery playing that he did, and of course in his later years he evolved and other elements came into it as well, there was a really gentle side to him. And that came through in his music, a lot of his music, and especially his later recordings in the past 25 or 30 years. I didn't know Pharoah, but I talked to him a couple of times. I was around him. When I first got to New York in the 70s, I used to go to the Village Vanguard a lot, and I somehow one night made my way back to the kitchen, and a bunch of interesting musicians in there. Rather than try to ingratiate myself into the scene, I just sat down in a chair, and I took in, I watched, I listened, I saw how these remarkable musicians how they communicated with each other, with a lot of love, with a lot of humor, and with a lot of truth. And I don't remember who was in the kitchen that night with Pharoah, but he was a quiet guy, not a big talker. You know, a number of people came up to him, different conversations. He was he seemed to me to be the type of fellow who, if someone told him a story, he would simply reply with a simple sentence, not a long diatribe. And in between talking to people, he was like fixated on his reeds and his horn, and he didn't keep that horn too far away from him. In fact, Wim Wicht, the Dutch producer of concerts and also a number of Pharoah's recordings on his Timeless label, in another video we did last week, a compilation called Great Moments with Pharoah Sanders has just been released on a vinyl by Timeless Records of his Timeless recordings over, I think, a 12 or 15-year period with John Hicks and some with William Henderson on piano. And Wim Wicht told me a story about how when he went to Pharoah's apartment, he kept his tenor saxophone very close by. And Wim didn't ask him why he did that, but after being with him for a while and hearing the way that Pharoah talked about music, he thought that Pharoah wanted to have his horn close by in case something came in that he wanted to play. So now Pharoah's gone, but he's not gone because his music is here. And those of us who heard him, who were lucky enough to hear him live and remember him, as long as his memory is with us, he'll never leave us. Certainly, for me, Pharoah Sanders represents an uncompromising man who spoke his musical truth, especially in the 1960s, to face that kind of resistance from critics and the audience when you create. And you create the truth with others as you know it, and to meet with skepticism and negativity, it takes tremendous inner strength to get beyond that. Many would fall along the wayside. It's just too much. But it never bothered John Coltrane or Pharoah Sanders or Eric Dolphy or Albert Ayler or Ornette Coleman or Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie when they started playing bebop. There were naysayers back then. I encourage you, by the way, to join in here with comments and questions, which you can do in YouTube on the chat, I believe, and on Facebook, just entering your comments. The Facebook was just full of comments today and remembrances about Wayne Shorter. And Wayne's music touched a lot of people. from Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. Wayne Shorter played with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers and Miles Davis in the 1960s and recorded some particularly memorable recordings on Blue Note Records. And yes, the dogs. I'm in Mexico. There's a lot of dogs here. Guys, please, I'm doing a show. Cool it. They stopped. I guess it worked. That's how I first heard about Wayne Shorter when he was with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. You know, that clip we just looked at was from 1960, live in Paris. Bobby Timmons started with that group, but took a brief hiatus, and Walter Davis Jr. on piano. So Lee Morgan trumpet, Wayne Shorter tenor saxophone, Walter Davis Jr. on piano, Jimmy Merritt on bass, sometimes said Jimmy Merritt on bass, and Art Blakey on drums. Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers was a particularly potent hard bop group, to say the least, driven by Art Blakey, a man who knew how to swing and really find fantastic musicians, because the jazz musicians were like a university, and many great players came through the Jazz Messengers. After Lee Morgan split, Freddie Hubbard joined the band. Many incredible players, and that's where Lee Morgan and Wayne Shorter teamed up in the Messengers. Also on, is it Speak No Evil or Night Dreamer? Night Dreamer. Yeah, Wayne Shorter and Lee Morgan. So Wayne Shorter gets into the band. What does he do? He's playing fantastic tenor saxophone. It's evolving, but he starts writing. And that's the other major component of Wayne Shorter's musicianship. And that's the fact that fantastic tenor player, instantly recognizable, evolved over the years, also tenor and soprano saxophone, but began to write. And he's written a lot of jazz standards. He wants to express his creativity in this way because he's a really creative guy, Wayne Shorter. I had the honor of spending a day with him in 1996. I'd met him a few times before that. I once chanted with him backstage before a VSOP concert with Herbie Hancock, which was an interesting experience. And Wayne and Herbie, of course, played with Miles. And today, oh, thank you for the compliment about my hat. Today, Herbie posted something on Facebook, and I want to read it. I think it's really beautiful. Herbie says, Wayne Shorter, my best friend, left us with courage in his heart, love and compassion for all, and a seeking spirit for the eternal future. He was ready for his rebirth. As it is with every human being, he is irreplaceable and was able to reach the pinnacle of excellence as a saxophonist, composer, orchestrator, and recently composer of the masterful opera Iphigenia. I didn't say that. I didn't pronounce that right. Iphigenia. I miss being around him and his special Wayne-isms, but I carry his spirit with my heart always. Yeah. So Wayne and Herbie, they go way back. I mean, they played together with Miles, and they remained friends. They recorded together. They played together in different configurations as a duo. In the 70s, the configuration was under the VSOP title, and it was everybody from the Miles band except Miles, who was into a different thing, wasn't really playing too much in the late 70s. Not playing at all, in fact. So it was the band that I saw, and then time at, I guess it was 78, at Avery Fisher Hall, Newport Jazz Festival, Freddie Hubbard, Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, and Tony Williams. And that's Miles' band without Miles. So Wayne went from the hard bop and swing of Art Blakey to, I don't want to say Miles's music in the mid-60s with the second great quintet was experimental, but it was in many ways. And the music went in many different directions that continued to evolve. By the late 60s, it had evolved into using electronic instruments, electric piano, organ, sometimes guitar. And thank you, Carol. And yeah, thank you, Kevin Hurst. See, I didn't know that. That's why I love to get your comments. Please share. Herbie sat in with Wayne when he first came to New York with Donald Byrd. Herbie lived in Chicago, and Donald Byrd said, "Come on, come to New York. I'll hire you." And he did. And oh, here's a question. What did globally change in 60s for you? Boy, I'll come back to that. That's a that's a big one, man. That's a big one. Let's see here. Oh, wow. Here I learned something new again. My hat is very commonly by the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria. Thank you, Femi. I did not know that. Wow. I got this in a store in Mexico. I did not know it came from Africa. Peter Furland, who's an excellent saxophone player and teacher and a friend of mine for many years, who lives in upstate New York, had a band, I don't want to say a Weather Report cover band, but a Weather Report a band that played Weather Report's music. And Peter saw Wayne many times. I saw him in the 70s with Weather Report as well. I was lucky to hear him with Jocko, that band with Jocko, Wayne, Joe Zawinul, and Peter Erskine, that Birdland era band. Phantom Navigator, Atlantis Joyrider. First date with Rochelle, his wife, to her music was 1999 at the Blue Note. So his last quartet, yeah, that great band with John Patitucci, Danilo Perez, and Brian Blade. Wayne's last group. Then the last time I saw him was at Carnegie Hall with his quartet, the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra. Thanks for mentioning all that, Peter. I mean, that helps to fill in the story, the great dimensions of Wayne Shorter as a composer and a musician. And I jump back and forth when I get these questions. But I mentioned that by the late 60s, Miles' group had evolved into In a Silent Way, which Wayne played at Bitches Brew, and then Wayne and Herbie and Tony and Joe Zawinul formed Weather Report and the Herbie Hancock group and Chicory and Returned Forever. And that was a big change. And Wayne was a big part of that, major contributor. And thankfully, his music from that period, there's a lot of it. And thankfully, there's a lot of Wayne Shorter video on YouTube as well. There's some video of Pharoah's later work. But I'm trying to think. I don't think there's any video of Pharoah and Train. No, there isn't. And there's a couple of videos of Pharoah from the late 60s at I think it's the Nice or the Antibes Jazz Festival when Lonnie Liston Smith was still playing piano. But when he started to evolve into more straight ahead and blues, and he did a lot of gigs European television, that's where we have a lot of video on Pharoah Sanders on YouTube. Wayne, luckily, caught on video with Miles in the mid-60s. That Steve Allen show that they did in 64. And with Weather Report. And then, of course, by the 70s, video, film, European TV, Wayne was, there's a lot of video of Wayne. And luckily, thankfully, a video of Wayne Shorter with Art Blakey from the early 60s. The European stuff and the stuff in England. Okay, some comments here. Al Cooper. Is that Al Cooper, the pianist, composer? Okay. Where are those other chat questions coming in from? Well, I guess you guys have heard, this comes as no surprise, there have been a lot of strange balloons up in the sky. And tonight, there's one up there. I can't show you because it's dark. So that's where the questions come. They're dropping down. I don't know if they're from this world or not. Maybe we need to have some kind of investigation. Not in Congress. Forget about that. Forget about the government. But seriously, friends, Facebook and YouTube are where the comments are coming from. Let's see. Oh, okay. You see the Facebook icon. Welcome aboard. Okay. Tall Oaks. Shorty was an oxymoron. Tall Oaks. I would love it if you would expound upon that. That's an interesting concept. Uh, thanks for the acknowledgement. I'm away short of Mason's weather report. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Kevin. It's not brain science. Yes, Pharoah, beautiful playing. I think we saw that on the opening track. I encourage you to look around and listen to some of that. And it's on recordings too for Timeless Records. Check out if you've never heard "Journey to the One" on Teresa Records. I don't know what year he did that. As you've got to have freedom. It's with John Hicks and Eddie Henderson, Idris Muhammad. I forget the bassist. It might be Ray Drummond. Stephen Hall. I lost the train here. I'm not sure if you're talking about Wayne or Pharoah in Tokyo. Wayne talked about Pharoah telling him to bring back the book, his composition book, which was packed. Yeah, because Wayne was a writer. You know, Wayne, when he was a kid, he created comic books. In fact, one of his Emanon, I think it's called, one of his recent releases, has the realization of a comic book that he created when he was a kid. Very smart kids into science fiction. Oh my God. Wow. Welcome. YP Free Jazz Guitar joins us from the Ukraine. Oh my goodness. I'm so happy you're able to get online. I'm so sorry about what's happening. My family is from the Ukraine. Half of my family is from St. Petersburg and the other half from Kiev. And seeing that word on the screen here, I mean, what's happening over there is just unbelievable. I wish it would end. I hope it ends soon. A moment of silence here for all the people who have perished because of a madman named Putin. So committing genocide on innocent people. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry to go in that direction, but that word and thinking about that, Wayne is a big loss. Yes, very talented, very precious, with great taste, and just a wonderful man to be around. A very quirky sense of humor, brilliant mind, could go in many different directions. You never quite imagined what he might say. I mean, you could be talking to him. You could have the TV on in the background. You could be writing something at the same time. Let's see here. New comments. Did my master's thesis on Nefertiti. Yeah, great tune. One of many. Incongruous got us here. Who or what is incongruous? Infinize. Beautiful song. I would love to see that choreography. Yeah, Wayne's music, a lot, as I said, jazz standards. Hopefully people will do his more serious work again. Yeah, jazz, make jazz not war. Amen, brother. God. Yeah. Okay. The video of Wayne and the Messengers, yeah, with Lee and Bobby Timmons. Yeah, that's the one they did in '72. And there's some stuff on that when Art Blakey went to Tokyo, when they went to Japan in 1962, they played with a Japanese big band called the Sharps and Flats. And some of the tracks, you can find this on YouTube, are the Jazz Messengers with that big band. It's really fantastic. Mr. Gone. Wasn't that Peter Furlan? Isn't that the name of your group? Okay. 4 a.m. Eric Schultz. I hope you don't have to get up and go to work tomorrow. On the internet rather late. Yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness, Peter. Wow. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Let's see. Peter and I go back to the 80s. So it's 80s, 90s. Yeah. We go back a little ways there. We used to live, we were neighbors in a small town outside of New York City called Edgewater, New Jersey. Yeah. And then Peter got married and he moved away. And that was a beautiful thing. And he has a beautiful wife and a beautiful daughter. And he's an excellent musician and I think he's really one of those positive forces in the jazz community, working with young people, turning them onto this music. I did a program a couple weeks ago, Paul Carr. Paul Carr, a great tenor player, educator in the DC area with the Jazz Academy, and produces the Mid-Atlantic Jazz Festival. And it's people like Peter Furlan and Paul Carr that maybe aren't as famous as Wayne Shorter and Pharoah Sanders, but nevertheless, they are out there doing something, touching people's lives, making this world a better place. And those of us who are involved in this music, what it does for us, what it does for our community, what it does for the world is such an amazingly beautiful, deep, spiritual, incredible thing. And the times that we're going through here, it's in such contrast to all that other shit. I mean, I don't know how I could survive without jazz today. It's that important to me. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, just swinging by. Solemn day. Yeah, it turned out to be a pretty solemn day. Wow. Stan Getz, another one of my favorites. Got into jazz in the 70s. Wayne Shorter wrote Lester Left Town as a teen, then met him in Canada. Wayne was born in Newark, went to New York. Yeah, that's true. Okay, there you go. Picking up all these new facts here. 4 a.m. That's right. That's right. You got that right, Eric. You must be a musician. 10 m. Secret person there. Doesn't want to give out their name. Such a huge influence. I forget you pushing it. Yeah. That's the kind of guy Wayne Shorter was. That's the kind of musician he was, like his friends John Coltrane and Sonny Rollins and Miles Davis, always pushing the boundaries, never being satisfied, always changing fearlessly. Yeah, I am devoted to jazz. This is true. Henry Brent, Hank. Is that Hank Jones you're referring to? Okay, no big stars without the local teachers. We need teachers like Paul Carr and Peter Furlan and so many others, because there's a lot of jazz education programs on this planet. But jazz is not something that's spread in the mass media, so to speak. With the arrival of the internet, people have a lot more access to jazz, recorded jazz, audio, video, jazz video guy, YouTube, webcasts from Smalls. But nevertheless, we don't have a proselytizer out there. Now, the proselytizer doesn't have to take on a negative connotation, but I'll give you a good example of what I'm talking about. When I came up in the 50s and the 60s, there wasn't really any jazz on TV per se, but there was a TV program called Young People's Concerts that featured the New York Philharmonic with Leonard Bernstein. These concerts were on once every 5 or 6 weeks on Sunday. And Leonard Bernstein was an incredible creator, a credible communicator, excellent conductor as well. And people watching the show got turned on to classical music, understood it, and dug it for the first time. Probably brought more people into the classical music tent. And there's no one on TV or no one that reaches a lot of people in that way. It's much more segmented, it's more segregated now. So it's these local programs. It's people like Paul and Peter Furlan, and it's just there's just so many of them. This is the way that the gospel is spoken. This is the way the gospel is spread. That's why it's so important. We all work together as one big community here. And so I love jazz. I love the people in the community. I'm so happy to be a part of it. I'm so blessed to do this and share my enthusiasm. Now, one more point here before I get to some questions. And oh my goodness, time is flying by here. I don't know how long we've been on the air here. I don't know. Not too long. Anyway, some people have said to me, your jazz video guide channel has mostly old school jazz, the older guys, people over 50. And these are the musicians that I have been listening to my life. These are the musicians, many of whom I know. I've worked with either as a jazz journalist or maybe in video or seen them live. And this is the music that I know. Now, I live in Mexico now, which kind of limits my access to many things. I don't really have my finger on the pulse of a lot of the musicians who are playing today. I wish I did, but I don't. So I've decided, let me focus on the cats that I know, because I want to, as someone said, send them some flowers. And I think by turning people on with my enthusiasm and knowledge to people like Wayne Shorter and Pharoah Sanders, perhaps more people will join us in the jazz community and find out about some of these incredible new artists who are out there. And there's a lot of them, and they are really good. My principal access to contemporary jazz right now are the webcasts from Smalls, seeing some of the newer cats on the scene there. So I just wanted to answer that and go on to the next thing. Can you tell us how he and the great Joe Zawinul got together to form Weather Report? Well, Wayne Shorter and Wayne hold on a second. Back up. Take two. Wayne Shorter and Joe Zawinul met when Wayne Shorter was playing with Maynard Ferguson briefly, and Joe Zawinul was on piano. In fact, they met in Montreal at a jazz festival up there. Wayne Shorter only did a couple of gigs with Maynard Ferguson's big band, and Lee Morgan grabbed Wayne Shorter, said, "You got to come and play with Art Blakey," and that's how he joined the Jazz Wessengers. But those brief meetings initially began a friendship with Wayne Shorter and Joe Zawinul, and they were both part of the whole fusion thing, and all of a sudden Weather Report, and that's how that happened. Archie Shepp is still here. Archie Shepp is a fascinating guy, another part of that 60s avant-garde controversy, another guy who's evolved over the years to many different things. He's still with us. He's in his 80s. Saw Birdland, Albert, you saw Pharoah at Birdland play The Creator's Master Plan. That's one of Pharoah's great compositions. David Perry says, "Jazz isn't dead. It smells funny." Frank Zappa's quote. Let's see here. My cousin Scott Mayo, Sergio Mendez, maybe he plays with Sergio, met Wayne. I saw him twice, but you met Joe Anderson, Erto, Bart Swan. That's an interesting combination of people. Joe Henderson, fascinating man, very, very highly intelligent. Airto, remember when Airto arrived with Miles? No one had ever really thought about Brazilian percussion in that way. Gary Bartz played with Miles Davis in that band. Actually, after Wayne left the band, I saw Wayne's last gig with Miles at the Fillmore East. It was in 1970. It came out as a recording. It was on a triple bill with Steve Miller and Neil Young. They did things like that back then. And that was Wayne's last gig. The band was Miles, Wayne, Chick, Dave Holland, and Jack DeJohnette. And then Chick stayed with the band. Steve Grossman joined the band, and Airto joined on percussion, and that's when they played Miles at Fillmore. By then, Wayne and Joe were starting to talk about Weather Report, and I think Weather Report made their debut in '71. Yeah. Okay. Peter the teacher his students were focusing on Wayne's compositions, Tom Thumb and Footprints. No, I wasn't a saxophonist. I was a trumpet player, but I never practiced. Poor self-discipline at that time. My dad was a musician, but he didn't want to encourage me because he hated the music business. And then I kind of backed into the music business. I need to come back to New York. I'm living in Guanajuato. I have a great life here. New York to visit, perhaps, but I would never move back there. I lived there for a long time. Much happier here now. Uh, don't want to talk about why I left the United States, but here I am. 550. I'm not sure what that refers to. Wash hands. Okay, I don't know what that is. Lou Donaldson. I think Lou Donaldson recently turned 90. Lou Donaldson's amazing. He was also he predated Wayne and Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers in the late 50s when the band that recorded live at Birdland was Clifford Brown on trumpet. And yeah, Lou Donaldson plays the blues. I love Lou Donaldson. I love the things that Lou Donaldson did with Lonnie Smith on organ. What made Wayne such a unique composer? Well, that's an interesting question. Well, first of all, I think that in jazz, if you can write a melody that people remember, that's a big step forward. And Wayne's melodies were a number of them were so memorable they've become jazz standards. They're in my head. I'm a horrible vocalist. I won't sing any now, but there's a lot of them. Footprints. Sometimes when I do these shows and I think somebody asks me a question, I think about it like all of the, and I think visually. I was thinking, what Wayne Shorter compositions should I mention? And suddenly it was like a computer graphic in my brain. All these titles of Wayne Shorter compositions, flash through my brain and visual there. I got like little artificial. Well, it's like it can't be artificial intelligence if it's my brain, right? Anyway, great melodies. As he got on, more sophisticated harmonies. His use of later years of rhythm in the musical with Weather Report. I thought one of the reasons for Weather Report's success was because of the unique compositions of Joe and Wayne, because they were really quite different. And speaking of that band, Alex Acuna. I saw them with Alex Acuna. I saw them with Manuel Badrena when he played drums, and also with Peter Erskine. And Alex, Alex is a great drummer. Glad you saw Gary Bartz. I know he worked recently in what's Todd Barkin's club, Keystone Corner in Baltimore. I don't know if that was the one you were at. Okay, you make a point there. Thank God he didn't depart then. But yes, by that point he had already written some major music. 440, vibrations, creation music. Yeah. Okay. Oops. I'm sorry. I agree. I'm just clicking through here. Solo piano. Yeah. Albert Tootie Heath is with us, the last Heath brother. Jimmy and Percy were friends. I love Jimmy. I love both their playing. Percy with the MJQ, Jimmy with his own groups. The Heath brothers. Great men from Philadelphia. Tootie's living in Santa Fe now. I don't know how much playing he's doing. And thankfully, the great Benny Golson, who's in his 90s. Well, both Benny Golson and Sonny Rollins are in their 90s. And they are the only survivors from the infamous A Great Day in Harlem picture. I'm glad to hear that things are popping in Europe. That's a good thing. Peter Furlan suggests Weather Report, Elegant People, A History of the Band Weather Report. I'm sure it's available on Amazon. Ron Carter in his 80s. Ron and Herbie are both approaching their mid-80s. Sonny is going to be 93. And if you haven't checked out Aidan Levy's great new biography of Sonny Rollins, Saxophone Colossus, The Life and Music of Sonny Rollins, highly, highly recommended. Yeah. It is sad news when we lose somebody, especially someone we care about so much as Wayne Shorter. Wow. Once again, thank you for bringing some to attention, Alan Chase. Wayne played a unique solo on Lou Donaldson's, must have been Blue Note Records' Lush Life Nanette album in January of 1967. Amazing mind and versatility, sweet slumber. After this broadcast, I'm going to check that out. Yes. Well, Wayne was a Buddhist, and I suspect he will have a peaceful and safe journey. Yeah. Well, interesting point there. Supernova was one of Wayne's last Blue Note recordings. If I'm not mistaken, Chick Corea plays drums on there. And his music had changed by that point. I'm not going to talk about that now, but check that album out. And I guess after the 60s, then everybody did start to play Wayne's tunes. Okay. Wayne wrote relatively simple diatonic melodies, Pinocchio being an exception, but with very rich harmony, with space for the musicians to interact. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. I feel like I'm on Chat GPT now. Right now, I typed in, how would you describe Wayne Shorter's compositions? But no, it's just a joke. You're a human. I hope. I don't know. That's a good question. You know, after Dave Holland left the band, after Dave Holland left Miles Davis, Tony Williams wanted Miroslav Vitus to be the bass player in the band. Miroslav was either in Weather Report or just left Weather Report. And instead, Michael Henderson, a Motown veteran, became the bass player in the band in 1970 and took that music in an entirely different direction than Miroslav. I may have my dates there. I'm confusing it. I always mention that because Miroslav made a major contribution to Weather Report in the beginning. Whether or not he was shortchanged, I don't know the inner workings of that. I do know that there's some video and recordings of Miroslav in the band, and he sounds great. And of course, Jocko's appearance with Weather Report definitely was monumental for sure. And by the way, check out the Ron Carter documentary on PBS. It's not on PBS anymore, but guess what? You can find it on YouTube. Shortchanged. Yeah, I could have used another 10 years, 20, 30 years of Wayne Shorter. Okay, interesting. I was reading something. Did he play on a Don Henley recording? I forget. He played on someone else, but yeah, Steely Dan, a great group, and one of their hit recordings, I guess I could say, introduced Wayne Shorter to a lot of people. He played with Joni Mitchell a lot too. Now, this is something Dizzy Gillespie said the same thing. Dizzy Gillespie in his later years said, it's taken me all these years to figure what to leave out. And it's interesting that someone with Zen, a handle with Zen as the first word, picked what to leave out. That's a Zen concept, I think. And yes, Wayne Shorter was a man of incredible taste. There's no doubt about that. Well, I'm going to sign off here. It's been a lot of fun hanging out. And certainly Wayne Shorter touched many lives. He'll continue to touch many lives with his music. His body is no longer here, but his music is. Those of us who were lucky enough to hear him live, some of us very lucky to meet him, talk to him, unforgettable. They say that the longer people remember you, the longer you live. And certainly he'll be remembered in eternity for what he left us. So please listen to some Wayne Shorter. And by the way, I should mention here, you may have, if you've been following my channel or my saga, YouTube versus Brett Premack and the Jazz Video Guy in how algorithms took over the world. Well, I've had some problems, YouTube. I was thinking about, do I really want to continue doing this? I'm losing, just like, whole drama. The response has just been unbelievable. And also, I've asked people to help me by searching for Jazz Video Guy on YouTube, selecting a video, watching the video in its entirety, leaving a comment, liking the video, and subscribing. This is to create the exact specifications of the YouTube algorithm required to recommend my videos to other viewers. A number of people have done this, and my channel is starting to come back to life. So the Jazz Video Guy continues. It's been interesting. It's been 17 years, 16 years, I don't know, whatever it is now. It always seems to go in different directions at different times. But what can I tell you? I can't cut it loose. This music is so much a part of me, and it's my contribution to it. If I had been a more disciplined kid, my dad encouraged me, I probably would have been a musician. I probably would have been a jazz musician. Can't say if I would be in the category of anybody that we've talked about, but certainly you never know what's going to happen in this life. So I'm going to say goodnight here with the final comment from one of my favorite cities, Amsterdam, home of some great jazz and some wonderful people. The Dutch are some of the most wonderful people in the world, along with the Mexicans. Of course, there's good people everywhere. So good night, goodbye, stay healthy, and keep listening to jazz.